Elon Musk chooses to leave the millionaire behind because of a black homeless man's secret. The city never sleeps, but last night something did. James Parker's world, the glass towers, endless meetings, money flowing like rivers, suddenly felt frozen. They say Elon Musk walked away from an exclusive deal with James, the ruthless billionaire everyone knows, because of one man. Not some polished executive, not a celebrity. A black, homeless man named Marcus, standing quietly in a shadowed alley like he held a deadly secret. No one expected it. The news hit like a thunderclap. How could a ragged man, curled on cold concrete, shake the foundations underneath James Parker's empire? The story spread fast, whispers fueled by shock and disbelief. They called Marcus a ghost, a forgotten puzzle piece in a family too rich to acknowledge. Rumors flew. Marcus is the heir to a lost billionaire empire, a fortune swallowed by time and lies. And now he wanted what was stolen. James Parker's empire teetered on the edge, not just his money, but everything he'd built with sweat and cunning. The night was thick with tension. 1 minute, James sat alone in his sleek penthouse, the city lights reflecting off his tired eyes. A hollow ache gnawed inside him. Despite everything, his world was empty. Then people around the city watched, stunned. "Did you see that?" one woman gasped on the subway. "Rich man scared of a homeless guy? Crazy times," muttered a man on the street. But it wasn't just about money anymore. Something darker stirred behind the scenes. A powerful tycoon with cold eyes saw Marcus's return as a threat. Rumors said he'd do anything to silence the man, before the truth exploded in everyone's faces. James felt a storm raging inside. His pride screamed to fight. His heart, long buried, whispered to listen. Their world was a battlefield. Luxury penthouses against cracked sidewalks. Secret letters against broken bottles. Silent fears against loud dangers. And then came the message. A cryptic note slipped under James's door. No signature. Just a single line. "You and Marcus share more than wealth. The past is closer than you think." James's hands shook. His mind raced. What did it mean? Who sent it? And what hell was coming next? The city watched them. Two men from opposite worlds, caught in a web of power, pain, and secrets. But one thing was clear. Nothing would ever be the same. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without notice. Take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content that's coming. And since you're here, drop a powerful like that really helps me with the algorithm. Oh, and let me know in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. James stared at the note, his mind racing. The weight of the words pressed down on him, aching in his chest. What could it mean? The past was neither forgotten nor forgiving. He had to find Marcus. Leaving his penthouse, he braced himself against the cool night air. The city buzzed, cars honked, voices echoed, the world carried on with its relentless pace. Yet for James, time felt distorted, every second stretching long and thin. He rushed through the streets, heart pounding, thoughts spiraling. When he reached the alley where he first saw Marcus, it was empty. His stomach sank. The shadows loomed, silent and foreboding, whispers of secrets paving the way. "Where did you go?" he muttered, scanning the dark corners. Suddenly, a scream shattered the quiet. It pierced through the night, raw and desperate. James's heart raced again, but this time with urgency, not just fear. He bolted towards the sound, bursting into an open courtyard filled with startled onlookers. There, amidst the sea of faces, lay Marcus, collapsed on the ground, eyes wide in shock. In the middle of the crowd, a figure in a dark suit stood motionless, the smirk on his face eerily calm. James recognized him. Victor Steele, the cold-eyed tycoon who had always loomed over his business dealings. "What have you done?" James shouted, pushing through the crowd. Panic twisted within him. Victor raised his hands, feigning innocence. "Me? I'm just here to watch the show, James. Seems like the ghost you were chasing is finally facing the past." "Call an ambulance!" someone shouted. The crowd stirred uneasily. James knelt beside Marcus, who winced, his breath short. "What happened?" he asked, trembling. Marcus looked up, eyes glazed. They found out. About the family. About you." His voice cracked, each word pulling James deeper into a well of confusion and dread. "What do you mean?" James pressed, desperation rising in him. You're tied to it. The heritage, the money." Marcus struggled. "Not just mine, yours. It was never lost. It was hidden." The revelation hit like a cold wave. James felt the ground beneath him shift. "What are you saying?" But deep down he felt the gnawing truth. Something in his past linked him to this man who lived on the streets. Then, the unthinkable happened. A siren wailed, faintly at first, then growing louder. People began gasping, eyes darting away from Marcus. A flash of blue and red lights flooded the courtyard, illuminating the scene. Victor stepped back, a wicked grin spreading across his face. "Goodbye, James. Your past is coming home, and it's not what you think." With that, chaos erupted. Officers flooded the courtyard, barking orders. The crowd buzzed with noise, gasps, whispers, confusion. Marcus attempted to sit up, but James held him down gently, feeling the tremors of his body. "What do you mean?" James repeated, panic rising. "Time's almost up," Marcus whispered, just as a figure in uniform approached. "Step away from him," the officer yelled, pointing at James. Questions flooded James's mind. Pain echoed in his chest. Who was he, really? What was this connection? Was Marcus right about their families? As the officers pulled him back, everything spun. A mix of fear and realization gripping James's heart. He was on the precipice of something monumental and deadly. In that moment, he knew nothing would ever be the same. The truth lurked close, waiting to unravel the very fabric of his life. But what was the truth? How deep did this dark well go? The sirens blared, drowning out all thoughts, leaving only a haunting echo of doubt. And as he looked into Marcus's eyes, he felt the shadow of the past wrapping around them both, tighter than ever. James stared at the note, his heart hammering like a wild animal. The message felt heavier than lead. Could it be true? Did he share something with Marcus? A hidden past? The air sat thick with questions, nearly choking him. He needed answers. Now! In the city, everything moved faster than a heartbeat. Crowds flowed around him, oblivious to the chaos brewing within. But he felt the weight of their gazes, curious whispers, trailing him like shadows. Did they know? Did they sense the storm? He dashed out of his penthouse, determination surging. Every step echoed in his mind. He half-heartedly tried to convince himself it was paranoia. But deep down, a sense of urgency clawed at him. The city felt alive, but his world was on the brink of collapse. As he reached the street, he saw Marcus. The man's presence was like a small fire flickering in the gloom, drawing James closer. Their eyes met again, and the familiarity was unsettling. A shared secret, buried in time, washed over James like icy water. Without thinking, he approached Marcus, desperate for clarity. Do you know what this means?" His voice cracked, not from anger but fear. Marcus studied him for a long, charged moment. Then a blaring siren pierced the night. A police car skidded to a halt nearby. Lights flashing, the world around them transformed into a vivid nightmare. James's stomach twisted as officers poured out, scanning the crowd. Instinctively, he looked at Marcus, their connection suddenly fraught with danger. "What did you say to them?" James hissed, half joking, half terrified. The homeless man shook his head, eyes wide, but his fear wasn't entirely for himself. Before James could ask more, the officers marched towards them. One of them, a tall man with a sharp jaw, stepped forward, eyes locked on Marcus. "You again," he barked, voice dripping with bitterness. "This is your last warning." A knot tightened in James's chest. He felt the world tilt dangerously, his body buzzing with adrenaline. "Wait, what's going on?" He attempted to shield Marcus unconsciously, stepping between the officers and the homeless man. His heart raced, and he felt his pulse pounding in his ears. But before anyone could respond, a sudden interruption shattered the tension. An explosion, far off yet intense, rocked the city. Glass shattered. The ground trembled beneath James's feet. Panic surged through the crowd as screams erupted. Chaos ensued. What was happening? Everything spiraled into confusion. James's instincts kicked in. He grabbed Marcus's arm, dragging him away from the danger. The city felt alive with fear, but now there was a more significant threat looming. "Come on!" he shouted over the din, adrenaline coursing, pulling Marcus through the chaotic streets. Strangers scattered, the air thick with smoke and confusion, an all-consuming fog that obscured everything. He needed answers. The heaviness of the note morphed into a question mark, a whisper of fate that demanded to be heard. Then, out of the chaos, Marcus suddenly paused, his expression shifting from fear to something darker. "It's coming," he murmured, fear lighting in his eyes like fire catching on dry grass. "They know." James felt a chill creep up his spine. "Who knows? What are you talking about?" But Marcus was staring into the distance, the weight of unseen threats hanging heavy. "Your family, it's more intertwined than you think." And in that moment, a sudden realization hit James like an icy wave. Everything he thought he knew about his life was unraveling, revealing layers of deception he could never have imagined. "Do you trust me?" Marcus's voice broke through the din. "We need to move. Now." Their worlds collided with violence. Each step into the unknown felt like running headlong into darkness. James's mind raced. Everything was at stake, and he was about to plunge into a reality that might swallow him whole. But something was coming, and he might not be the man who emerged on the other side. James felt the weight of Marcus's words hanging in the air, a curtain of dread descending. "They know," Marcus had said, and the chill of those words coursed through him. "Who knows?" James pressed, but Marcus only shook his head. The streets had turned chaotic, and amid the confusion, James felt a momentary sense of clarity. They were connected somehow, bound by family ties deeper than he had ever understood. But before he could grasp the weight of it all, the crowd surged, and Marcus was pulled away from him. "Get away from him!" a voice barked. Another officer pushed through the mass of people, eyes like sharp knives directed right at Marcus. "Back off!" James shouted, stepping forward instinctively. He could feel his heart thudding hard. He hasn't done anything wrong, but the officer ignored him. His hand reached towards Marcus, who stood frozen, eyes wide, body trembling. In that instant, everything felt like it was teetering on the edge of disaster. And then it happened. A loud crack echoed through the air, like a gunshot. James turned, instinctively getting in front of Marcus, instinct kicking in. But it wasn't a bullet. A glass display shattered nearby, sending sharp shards into the air. The world exploded into chaos as people screamed and ran for cover. In the midst of the turmoil, James felt a sharp pain in his side. He stumbled, looking down, blood blossoming across his shirt. Panic flooded his thoughts. What? No. He gripped his side, but the warm flow didn't stop. "James!" Marcus shouted, panic-stricken, his voice cutting through the noise. James looked up to see the officer still there. The man's expression shifted from aggression to shock, his eyes wide as he realized what just unfolded. But then another sound broke through. The roar of the crowd, mixing with sirens, grew louder. And from the corner of his eye, he saw Victor Steele lurking in the shadows, a spectator in this disaster. Everything turned blurry. James pressed a trembling hand against the wound. "I need!" His thoughts slipped away like water through his fingers. But a sudden clarity slammed into him. What if Marcus was right? What if their ties were more than mere coincidence? As darkness began to creep in at the edges of his vision, he managed to gasp, "Marcus! The family! The connections!" "Stay with me, James!" Marcus shouted, but desperation lined his voice. And in that moment, like a lightning bolt, it hit him. A twisted memory, something he had always known but never understood, roared to the surface. His mother, her whispers about a hidden lineage, the ancient family name he was never supposed to know. "Your family? He struggled to get the words out, voice quaking with realization. "They've lost someone, and it's me." "No!" A gasp shot through the crowd. Everyone froze, all eyes glued on the scene. The tension thickened, electric. Suddenly, a loud crack punctured the chaos again, but this time it was different. The air shimmered like a mirage, and with a deafening boom, a masked figure burst from the shadows, crashing through the crowd. Gun raised. Time slowed. James's mouth dropped. He glanced at Marcus. In that moment, everything shifted. The past, the family, the childhood stories. It blurred with the reality of the masked assault. Who was this figure? What did he want? The stakes rocketed higher than anything he had ever faced. "Get down!" Marcus screamed, pushing James as a loud shot rang out. The world, slipping away once more. Everything went dark. All sense of time vanished as confusion and pain took over. And then the image swam back into view. Marcus's terrified eyes, the masked figure looming closer, and the realization crashing down like the weight of the world around him. What secrets lay waiting in that tangled web of their past? Would he survive to find out? The sirens wailed all around, and as everything faded to black, the last question lingered. Could James truly uncover the truth that could alter everything he thought he knew? James stood in the dim light of his penthouse, the note heavy in his hand. You and Marcus share more than wealth. The past is closer than you think. His heart raced. What did it mean? The city outside hummed with life, unaware of the storm brewing between two worlds. He needed to find Marcus now. He dashed out, the door slamming behind him. The cold night air hit him like a splash of ice water. His feet pounded against the pavement as he searched the streets, every shadow a potential hiding place for the man who had entered his life like a whirlwind. Where was he? Finally, by the alley where they first met, he spotted Marcus. The homeless man sat against the wall, his presence somehow grounding yet frightening. James approached, breathing hard. "Marcus!" he called, urgency coating his voice. Marcus looked up slowly, his eyes echoing confusion and wariness. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered, glancing around as if danger lurked in the darkness. "Something's wrong," James said, heart thumping. "I got a message. It mentioned the past." As James spoke, an eerie tension thrummed between them. Marcus shifted slightly, his expression tightening. "It's not just about us," he whispered. "It's bigger than you think." James felt a shiver run down his spine. He wanted to know more. Suddenly, chaos erupted. A low rumble rolled through the streets. The ground beneath James shook. People screamed, scattering like leaves in a storm. A figure appeared at the end of the alley, shadowy. Before James could react, a deafening blast tore through the night. A car exploded in a fiery eruption at the far end of the street. Flames leapt and people screamed, fear ripping through the air. James stumbled back. Everything blurred. Screams, smoke, chaos. In the midst of the explosion, he caught a glimpse of the imposing figure, pushing toward Marcus. "Run!" James yelled, grabbing Marcus's arm. But Marcus froze, shock etched into his features. "This is my fight too!" he shouted above the cacophony, eyes blazing. Suddenly, the imposing figure revealed a badge. "FBI!" he barked. "You're both coming with me." A wave of confusion washed over James. FBI? What was happening? They weren't criminals. They were just men, fighting their own battles. Marcus's secrets flooded James's mind. What had he gotten into? Before he could process it, the darkness closed in. Marcus took a step forward, fists clenched. "You don't know who you're dealing with." The words hung in the air, saturated with weight. The embodiment of the past pressing down on them, thick as the smoke that choked the streets. James felt a tension snap like a taut wire. The city swirled around them. James could hear gasps, whispers, confusion. What was the truth? "Marcus, wait!" he started, but the homeless man's expression shifted, turning hard and unyielding. Then, in an instant, everything changed. The ground shook again, not from the blast this time, but from a realization that echoed louder than any explosion. James's heart sank as he recognized the look in Marcus's eyes. Rage, desperation, knowledge. And then the figure stepped closer, revealing something unmistakable, a symbol on his badge that sent a wave of terror crashing over James. It was a family crest, one that he had seen before, hanging in his mother's mansion. Before he could take in the staggering implications, everything spun into darkness. A heavy hand gripped his shoulder. A sharp voice cut through the chaos, and reality twisted in an unexpected, horrific way. "Time to face the truth, James," the agent growled. "Your past has finally come knocking." And just like that, the light of hope flickered out. The choices ahead blurred into shadows. Whatever lay ahead, it was clear. Nothing would ever be the same. The city breathed heavy around James as he stood in the stillness of his penthouse. The note burned in his hand, the words circling through his mind like a storm. "You and Marcus share more than wealth. The past is closer than you think." Anxiety twisted in his gut. He needed answers. Grabbing his coat, he rushed out, the cold night air smacking him like a wake-up call. The streets were alive with energy, people bustling around, but he felt like he was in a different world. Faces blurred past him, strangers caught in their own stories. His focus narrowed to one man, the man who had shifted the ground beneath him. Marcus! James found him where he always did, tucked away in that alley. But something was different this time. The shadows didn't seem to cling to Marcus as before. They pulled back, revealing a figure almost regal, despite the wear of a hard life. James approached, heart racing. "Marcus!" The homeless man looked up, eyes flashing with a knowing intensity. "James," he said softly, voice like gravel. "You got my message?" "What does it mean?" James demanded, desperation creeping into his tone. "What do we share?" Just as Marcus opened his mouth to speak, a piercing shriek echoed through the night, shattering the air. Both men froze. Heads turned, voices hushed. James's body tensed. What was that? Then the sound of footsteps, heavy, fast, closing the distance. Voices surged through the dark, angry shouts, crashing like waves. A group of men rounded the corner, eyes wild, faces twisted with rage. "There he is!" someone yelled, pointing straight at Marcus. James stepped forward instinctively, shielding Marcus with his body. "Wait! What do you want?" "Get out of the way, rich boy!" One of the men spat, his fists clenched. "He's wanted for questioning!" Wanted? The word hit James like a brick. Marcus's expression shifted. Fear, then something else. Something dark and knowing. "They've got it all wrong!" he murmured, voice filled with a strange calm. "They've been looking for me for a long time." Suddenly, chaos erupted. The men surged forward, ready to take Marcus. A flash of silver caught James's eye. It looked like a weapon. "Step back!" he shouted, panic clawing at his throat. Before James could react, Marcus moved. It was swift, almost supernatural. He stepped out of the way, and suddenly there was no longer a rough, homeless man in front of him. Instead, James saw a man he barely recognized. A man dressed in a tailored suit, eyes filled with power that cut through the darkness. The voice that came next sent shivers down James's spine. "I was never lost, James, just waiting for the right moment." The men halted in their tracks, confusion painting their faces. But then realization flickered back to anger. "You're him!" one of them screamed. "The heir!" The crowd around them gasped collectively. James's heart raced. He looked at Marcus. No, the man now standing before him. "What do you mean, the heir? What are you talking about?" But as he spoke, Marcus, the heir, glanced back at James, and in that moment, everything changed. The warmth in Marcus's eyes turned cold. The emotional bond they had begun to forge now lay. He stood between two worlds, unsure of what he had just set in motion. And in that moment, beneath the weight of the future pressing in around him, one thing was clear. Nothing would ever be the same again. James stared at the note, his heart racing. His palms were clammy as he picked it up again, repeating the words in his head. "You and Marcus share more than wealth. The past is closer than you think." What did that even mean? Panic clawed at his chest. It felt like the walls were closing in. He shot up from the couch, the city lights flickering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. He needed answers. This couldn't, no, shouldn't be happening. What could he possibly have in common with a homeless man? James paced, a storm raging inside him. Each step echoed like thunder in the empty room. Minutes later, he found himself on the street, searching for Marcus. The cool air hit him, sharp and unforgiving. He fought to maintain his composure, feeling the weight of the world pressing down. He could hear the clatter of the city, the honking horns, muffled conversations, and the distant sound of sirens. It felt alive, electric. Then he spotted him. Marcus was still leaning against the grimy wall, shadowed by the tall buildings above. The gleam in his eyes was haunting, like he could see straight into James's soul. "Marcus!" James called out, his voice cutting through the noise. The man looked up, eyes narrowing. He stepped forward, silent, but the tension between them crackled. "James," Marcus replied, voice low, steady, "you got my message." Panic flooded James. "What do you mean? What does it mean?" His words tumbled out, tangled with urgency. Marcus's gaze hardened, a storm brewing within him. "It means you and I are bound by blood. A legacy lost to shadows." James felt his stomach drop. What are you talking about?" He stepped closer, the city fading into the background. Marcus continued, his voice low. "You thought your wealth came from nowhere? Think again. You're not who you think you are." Then something shifted in Marcus's expression. A flicker, a brief shadow of fear. James noticed it. A fleeting moment before Marcus's face hardened again. What was hiding behind those eyes? Before James could respond, a sharp crack pierced the air. A gunshot? Screams erupted, crowding the streets. The chaos enveloped them. Everyone ran, a sea of fear. James instinctively grabbed Marcus's arm, pulling him to safety. But Marcus was staring down the street, eyes wide. "Look!" he shouted, pointing. A sleek black car screeched to a halt, a figure leaping out, aiming a gun, straight for Marcus. Time stretched like taffy as James felt a cold rush of adrenaline. The crowd scattered, but he couldn't move. Then it happened. A figure lunged forward from the side, an innocent bystander, an old woman with bright blue hair, trying to shield Marcus. The shot fired again. Everything froze. James's breath hitched. The world turned to slow motion. A sickening thud. The woman crumpled to the ground. Shock boiled within him, rage igniting. He barely registered the chaos around them anymore. His only thought was on Marcus. "Get away! You need to run!" he yelled. But Marcus's focus remained on the fallen woman, horror breaking across his face. "Why did you do that?" Marcus's voice trembled. "Why?" James felt his world twist again. He stumbled backward as people screamed and police sirens blared. But all he could see was the scene unfolding. The truth was close, and the woman's sacrifice turned everything on its head. Was this legacy worth it? As the sound of approaching footsteps filled the air, a chilling realization struck. Was Marcus really just a homeless man? Or had the city just uncovered a secret that tied him to a dangerous legacy he couldn't escape? The air thickened. The mystery deepened. And in that moment, everything changed. James stared at the scene unfolding before him. The fallen woman on the ground, her bright blue hair now dulled by the darkness of the street, seemed to pull the life from his body. He could barely breathe. The chaos of the crowd surged and receded, but he was frozen, his mind racing. What just happened? His pulse quickened, fear coiling around his chest. Marcus knelt beside the woman, his eyes wide, filled with a mix of horror and regret. "Why did you do that?" he whispered. It felt like an accusation, but James could see the guilt tearing Marcus apart. The sounds of sirens wailed in the distance. Every second felt like an eternity. A movement caught his eye. The imposing figure from the alley was rushing toward them, gun still raised. That chill ran down James's spine again as he pushed through the confusion, ready to grab Marcus and run. But Marcus spoke again, his voice steady. "It's too late. They know what I am." James's stomach twisted. "What do you mean? You're not... You can't be!" "Look," Marcus snapped, his eyes piercing through the fear. "Maybe I was hiding in plain sight, but it's not because I chose it. They've wanted me back for years." In that moment, the reality of who Marcus was shattered against James's internal walls. He saw glimpses of a truth too massive to comprehend, something that extended beyond their immediate chaos. "You're what?" But the answer hung heavy in the air, unanswered. The sirens grew louder, the chaos closing in. "What's this about?" One of the men approached, the same one who had just fired the gun. "You think you can hide from the syndicate?" The word hung in the air, dark and ominous like a death knell. "Wait!" James shouted, stepping forward, unable to hold back. "You're talking about the syndicate? What do they have to do with Marcus?" The man smirked, an unsettling grin that hinted at a world of desperation. "Everything." Suddenly, a terrifying realization struck James. His mother had spoken of a legacy, the untold story of bloodlines, connections within the dark underbelly of wealth. You're saying Marcus is involved in that?" The man laughed cruelly, but the sound twisted and warped, echoing through the alley like a requiem. "Not just involved, he's the key." A shot rang out, echoing like thunder. James flinched, instinctively recoiling, but it wasn't from the imposing figure. The gun fired into the air, shattering the tension. In the chaos, a second figure emerged. Another agent, intense, eyes filled with resolve. "Get on the ground!" she yelled, raising her own weapon, scanning the crowd. A jolt shot through James as he recognized her. It was Valerie, an old family friend, standing with a badge and authority redeeming the chaos. "Get back!" she shouted again, turning her gun toward the first man, her face fierce and unyielding. "Valerie, what are you doing here?" James shouted, panic spilling into his voice. But before she could respond, a flash of light erupted from behind her. A vehicle crashing into the scene, two men leaping out. The rush of uniforms came tumbling in, responding to the madness. Marcus stood amidst it all, heart racing, voice trembling. "James, they want to erase my existence, and yours is tied to it." Everything erupted. Bodies stumbled, lights spun, and screams filled the air, drowning out every thought. A gunshot rang out, but this time it was aimed at Marcus, who barely ducked. James lunged forward, a wave of desperation, but the smoke curled around them, thick and choking. "Get down!" Marcus yelled, and as James fell, everything shifted. The ground shook underfoot. A tremor that felt less like chaos and more like a rip in reality. In that moment, everything went dark, and his mind exploded with insight, a memory, a flash from his childhood that had been locked away. Everything he knew slipped away, replaced by a staggering realization. "Marcus, you're my brother." The world collapsed inwards, the truth hanging heavy in the air, palpable like the taste of ash. What was once familiar disintegrated, all stretched into a question of loyalty and blood. The crowd around them froze, eyes widened in shock. James felt the weight of not just the revelation, but a legacy of secrets and birthrights clawing to the surface. Would he emerge from this nightmare, understanding who he really was? Nothing would ever be the same again. James stared, breath caught like a stone in his throat. His mind raced, heart pounding like a hammer against his chest. "You're my brother." The words hung in the air, heavy and unreal. Marcus's eyes darkened, flickering with a mix of shock and something colder. Fear? Determination? James couldn't tell. The crowd around them stilled, every gaze pinned to where they stood. "James!" Valerie shouted, snapping him back to the storm brewing at their feet. "Get back! Don't—" But before she could finish, the imposing figure surged forward. "You think revealing that will save you?" He snarled at Marcus, eyes cold with malice. "The Syndicate's claws are deep, and they won't let you go, not now." Panic exploded in James's chest. "What do you mean, the Syndicate?" The words tasted bitter, like ash. But Marcus stood firm, a flicker of defiance surfacing in his expression. "You don't understand, James. What they want from us isn't just blood. It's everything!" ... The sirens wailed louder, a cacophony spiraling all around. A flash of red lights danced across Marcus's face, illuminating shadows that twisted like nightmares. James felt trapped, suffocated by confusion and urgency. That woman, James started, choking on the memories of the fallen figure. She sacrificed herself for you? Don't think about that now, Marcus shouted, his voice a jagged edge. We need to move. But the world felt slow, every second stretching like taffy. He glanced to the side, where Valerie was still standing, gun raised, scanning the chaos. Her face flickered through anger and concern. But just as quickly, the tension released. Something broke. Then, the unexpected happened. A sudden explosion erupted, sending shards of glass flying everywhere. As another vehicle careened into the scene, James's stomach twisted as bodies scattered. Time paused. He could almost hear his heartbeat, loud against the pounding chaos. Out of the wreckage, a figure emerged. A woman, her face painted with fury, marching straight toward them. James's breath seized. It was an old face, one he'd never expected to see again. His mother. No, he breathed. Disbelief coursing through him like ice. But this was not the mother he remembered. This woman radiated power, fury sparking in her eyes. Her presence commanded attention. James, she called, her voice ringing through the confusion. I should have protected you both. Marcus looked at James, confusion written across his face. What the hell is going on? I don't know, James stammered, feeling the ground shift beneath him. Mom, you're alive? Ignoring him, she directed her attention to Marcus, voice sharp as glass. You think you can just walk away from your destiny? Destiny? Marcus spat, voice laced with disbelief. You've got it all wrong. But she stepped closer, her aura overwhelming. No, Marcus, you were chosen. The Syndicate wants you. And now you're caught in something bigger than you can grasp. James's heart raced. This was not the reunion he had envisioned. What are you talking about? The crowd gasped. Tension electrified the air. Eyes darted back and forth, uncertainty clinging like a fog. The world around them blurred into the background, leaving only the three of them suspended in chaos. Chosen for what? James demanded, confusion bubbling into anger. What's the truth? And that's when the ground shook. Another explosion, but this felt different. Pulsing shockwaves rippled beneath their feet. A voice cut through the noise. A man cloaked in darkness, standing at the edge of the chaos, watching. Enough! He roared, and silence fell like a chokehold around them. All eyes turned, hearts pounding. His presence commanded a silence so deep that even the distant screams faded. You thought you could escape me, Marcus? You should know I always get what I want. The truth hung heavy. Everything James knew felt like a lie. Connections, legacy, survival. That pulsed through the chaos, waiting to unravel. Would they escape this nightmare? Or was this just the beginning of an even darker truth? The room stood still, yet chaos raged outside. James's heart raced as he faced the man who had revealed the truths buried in shadows. What do you want? He demanded, his words thick with fear and fury. The figure smirked, dark eyes glinting with amusement. I want what's mine. This wasn't just about money or power. This was about history, bloodlines, tangled. James felt the eyes of the crowd on him, the pressure mounting. Valerie moved forward, steady, gun raised, ready to protect them both. Back off, she ordered, voice steady. But the man laughed, a harsh sound that sliced through the tension. You think you can save him? The syndicate always wins. James stepped closer to Marcus, gripping his shoulder, trying to anchor them both. But Marcus stared out at the chaos, a mixture of determination and fear in his eyes. You don't get to decide, he spat back at the man. You don't own us. The energy between them crackled, rising higher. James's lungs tightened. He could barely breathe. Was this the moment everything fell apart? Would they lose everything in a single heartbeat? Then the sound erupted. A whirring hum. A drone? No, a helicopter. Above, headlights sliced through the dark, illuminating the scene below like the spotlight of judgment. Get down! Valerie shouted, but it didn't matter. The figure grinned, eyes wild. This is your end. But just then, a flash of light exploded from the helicopter. A beam, sharp and precise, trapped the villain in its glare. FBI, drop your weapon! A voice boomed through speakers, echoing down the alley. James shielded Marcus, heart pounding, hope flickering. This was it, the moment of truth. They were not alone anymore. The syndicate's grip was slipping, unraveling like thread at the slightest tug. As agents poured into the scene, confusion reigned. The masked figure began to back away, frustration etched on his face. You don't know what you're meddling in. Oh, he snapped, retreating toward the shadows. Marcus straightened, the tension in his shoulders easing just a bit. I've known all along, he breathed. You can't erase the past. We'll fight to remember. James turned to him, the realization dawning. The urgency felt like a heartbeat of hope. But what lay ahead still loomed large. What happens to us now? Valerie focused on the retreating figure, determination lacing her words. Now we find out who we are, together. As the crowd began to disperse, murmuring revelations about the chaos, James felt a wave of relief wash over him. There were people he could depend on. They could uncover the truths hidden for too long. But a sharp pang of uncertainty rooted into his gut. Would the syndicate come back? What about the woman who had fallen? As sirens blared and police filled the street, James took a deep breath, looking at Marcus. We'll face this together, won't we? Together, Marcus echoed. But James caught a brief flicker of doubt in his eyes. They turned to face the crowd, an army of the unknown. But amid the noise, the pain, the confusion, one truth lingered. There was a long road ahead. Would they walk it? Would they unveil the family secret? The bloodlines intertwined with darkness? Time would tell. And as they stood there, united yet vulnerable, an unsettling thought crept in. What truths lay waiting beneath the flesh, beneath their bond? The air thick with whispers of mystery. Their story wasn't over, not by a long shot. But before the echoes of uncertainty faded, one thing remained crystal clear. You have to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the upcoming exclusive stories that will shake everything you thought you knew. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. And don't wait even a second longer to flood the comments with your reactions and theories about this ending. Let's hear what you think. Share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this finale. Your support is what keeps this community alive. Don't miss out.